You're listening to Science Coast with Mallory Havens
Chris White.
And today our guest is
Ashley Skidmore.
And Ashley, on a previous episode, told us that she's in charge of the admissions process here at Lewis University. And we wanted to talk to her today about why go to college. So back in the day, there was a huge push to have students enroll in college, and every high school was college prep. And now there's been a push to bring back vocational programs. And it's important to understand what the use of a college degree is and who should consider doing it. So, Ashley, if you could give us some insight on that.
So I first want to say that I think the media has really, unfortunately, done higher education wrong in terms of the value of a college degree. But I also want to say that I think there are wonderful, fantastic careers that you can get that don't necessarily require a college degree. And so I think that's it's finding the right story for the student and the student's career goals to know which one is the right answer. And I think they both can be the right answer, but one, in my opinion, might be a little bit better. And that's clearly getting a college degree. I'll also answer this in terms of my role as a parent. So I have a son that just started college this year. And a year ago today, we were having this conversation about, do you want to go to college? Why should you go to college? And if you didn't go to college, what else would you do? And I think that's a part of the conversation that needs to be entered or considered, is that if you don't go to college, are you ready to have a career where you might need to work, hours such as 5 a.m. till noon or 1 o'clock, and where you're working perhaps for a union or perhaps for a restaurant, or you're in a sales position or working for a place like Amazon Warehouse, where the money can be very enticing, especially when you're 18 or 19 years old, and you've never really made $18, $19, $22 an hour. So that really sounds great. And so that you're thinking, well, I could just do that because I don't like school. I just don't know what I want to study. And I think for some of the students who don't know what they want to study, I think there's another chance of college is much more than just a piece of paper that we call a diploma. There's so many personal experiences that you gain. It opens your eyes to new careers that you've never heard of. New possibilities, new friendships, new relationships, and just a lot of self-awareness and self-exposure that you gain from a college experience and ultimately earning a college degree that you perhaps don't get if you go directly into the trades or directly into the workforce at such a young age.
I was going to go ahead, Mallory.
I always tell my students that nobody needs an employee that just memorizes facts. If they just wanted to know a simple piece of information, they have Google. What they need are employees that can process information, use it, find what is the good information, and figure out new and exciting things. So I tell my students the point of college isn't to memorize a bunch of stuff. It's to learn how to use that information. Of course, you need a foundation so that you can understand what you're looking up, but the whole point is to learn how to think differently than you knew how to do before.
And just to be clear for the audience, Mallory is still on assignment in Michigan. She hasn't gotten back yet, so we're gonna step on each other's toes occasionally. And so I apologize to everybody for that, and I apologize to Mallory for stepping on her toes. So
yeah, how dare you?
I know, you can slap me around later.
Rude.
So isn't the first time somebody said that to me. So I really want to emphasize to everybody that college is so much more than the classes.
Absolutely.
And especially here at Lewis University, it's such a community, and there's a familial type of an environment where you're engaging and maturing. And I have to say, in my 30, 40 years of higher ed experience, 18-year-olds are not ready to be released into the wild in many situations. So I think of college as more of the continuation of the maturation process, where we're elevating the level of the experiences that students are having. In high school, it's still very highly controlled because they're still minors. But then when they get to college, they're no longer minors, but at the same time, they still need additional experiences to become full functioning members. Not everybody, but many. And I would like to think that that's kind of what we're doing here at Lewis University. We're we're not highly controlling the environment, but it still is a somewhat structured environment where we provide large numbers of opportunities for students to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal, and we see it all the time, because you work with the students when they're coming in as first year freshmen, and then you see them at graduation, and you're like, oh my gosh,
transformation.
Look at the transformation that this person has
Absolutely.
gone through over the past 4 years. That is what I want to emphasize. That's why I think the true value of college education actually is.
Absolutely. And I think the experiences that you have, the people that you meet, you learn about conflict, you learn about how to push yourself, think in new directions, get along with people that you've never met before. I think that's one big thing. If you graduate from high school and go directly into the workforce, you're going to meet a certain set of people, but you may not be pushed beyond those boundaries of meeting new people, meeting people that aren't like you. And in college, you're going to sit in a class with people who think very differently, who come from a very different background, and suddenly you're now in a group project, so you have to find a way to overcome some of those differences to come up with great solutions to change the world. And you're not going to find that in the workforce.
And we spend a lot of time curating the environment so that the students don't have necessarily the easiest or funnest experience, but the one that will help them grow and develop and mature in the ways that'll, be productive and meaningful and constructive for the rest of their life.
Absolutely.
And sometimes when the student comes into the dean's office and they're all agitated about something and mad, and well, why can't I just be able to do X, Y, and Z? And it's like, in the back of my mind, it's like, because it's not in your best interests for me to do that. It's actually in your best interests that we challenge you in these ways, even though it's uncomfortable and you're not super happy with that right now.
You need to learn how to overcome barriers, not just have people remove them from your life. Whether that's a class, whether that's a relationship with a teacher, a relationship with a peer, to be challenged to figure out, here's the obstacle, how do I get over that? And not just have it removed for me immediately.
And to learn how to do all of these things in a curated, safe environment, because that's the other thing, is that, we are going to have very robust safety nets to help, and pick up the student. If, for example, a certain experience turns out to be more than a particular student can manage, we're there to catch them and then support them and say, okay, let's do it this way instead.
Absolutely.
And if you think about going to a high school, those are people who live in your area. That's your local community. You're not getting students from around the world typically, or, other states. Whereas when you go to college, you're going to get exposed to people from all different walks of life. Where I went to undergrad, 13% of the population was international. So I got exposed to so many cultures, even beyond the American culture, that I just had never had growing up in, a little suburban Michigan town. And that was one of the most eye-opening things to me, is that exposure to people with completely different life experiences. Yep. And it teaches you how to work with people who don't have the same context as you walking into a situation.
And, I'll take that one step further, thinking about our community here at Lewis and our student population. Many of them commute, right? And I immediately wanted to say you learn some of that and gain so much of that experience when you're living in the residence halls. But I really think at a place like Lewis, you gain that even if you're not living in the residence halls. You might be from Romeoville, Illinois, but you're studying alongside a student from India or from the city of Chicago that you've never spent much time in. So you really are meeting and exposing yourself to people that are wildly different, have, very diverse backgrounds than you. And now, like I said, you're sitting side by side in a class, and you might see that same student 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and you become the best of friends because of that experience.
And I'm just going to do a shout out for Lewis University in regards to our faculty and the qualifications that our faculty have for helping guiding this process. And we have a really, I think, a wonderful blend of academics who have gone through and gotten PhDs in their discipline, as well as what we refer to as professors of practice. These are individuals who have, gotten their college degrees, gone off and worked professionally in their field, sometimes for 20, 30 years, and then wish to give back to the next generation by coming back and sharing with the students here at Lewis University their experiences being professionals in a particular discipline. So when a student comes to Lewis University, it's not a purely, some people will say that professors have never had these experiences. They haven't been in the real world. That's not true at Lewis University.
Not true.
So many of our faculty actually came from the outside academia to come back and then share what they've learned to better prepare, because we like to think of ourselves as preparing students to engage in the professional world after graduation.
Right. I think
and a lot of
go ahead.
A lot of faculty members, if you talk to them, may have even been in the workforce for years before they went back and got doctorates. Because,
like you, Mallory?
Like me, like other people, where they got their doctorates and worked in industry and then came back to go and teach after a while. So yeah, we're not just living in an ivory tower. We've been out there in the trenches.
I wish I could remember which episode you shared some of these stories, and I was just falling on the floor because I couldn't believe some of the stories you were sharing with us on a previous podcast. Slip and slide, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah, in industry when the chemicals ate up the wax floor. Yeah.
Have to go back and check that one out.
So Ashley, what else would you suggest as students are thinking about, let's say a student's on the fence and it's like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'm still on the fence. What else might you add to help convince them that going to college is in fact worth the money? Because that's in some sense part of the challenge. It's like, is it worth going into debt to do this? Because then we hear on the media about people who are, in debt for, a decade or more trying to pay off their student loans.
I was actually thinking the same thing. It's the affordability, I think, is the part that keeps many families and students away from higher education, which I think is unfortunate. But I do also want to say that if you're committed to yourself and you want to invest in yourself, that earning a college degree is more than worth it. And there are ways to do it so that you're not taking out student loans that you have to pay back for, 15, 20, 25 years. Starting at a community college, gaining some experience, kind of tiptoeing your way into it is absolutely a fantastic plan for many students. If you're a student who, looks at the cost of education and you're like immediately looking at that sticker price because you have, maybe PTSD about buying a car, and you're like, how am I going to afford that? You have to know that financial aid is available. Educate yourself on the financial aid process. I'm sure there's 100 different podcasts about financial aid, but to know that there is financial aid available so that really nobody at Lewis pays the sticker price. We offer scholarships. We offer state grants, federal grants. There are ways to make a college education affordable. And the last thing I'll say is that if you follow the guidelines and do take out a student loan, you're following what we call the Stafford loan, which is the standard loan for an undergraduate student. There are maximums. You cannot borrow more than $5,500 in your first year in college. You cannot borrow more than $7,500 a year for your junior and senior year. And so there are maximums. So the stories that you hear of students with $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 in debt, they probably weren't thinking long term. They didn't have proper counseling. They have no financial literacy. They're making some poor decisions. If you're graduating with that much debt for an undergraduate degree and you can't afford it, you need to think about, are there other alternative ways that I can still accomplish the goal? Can I still earn the diploma from an institution like Lewis University by starting at a community college first? You absolutely can.
But the other thing I hear you saying is that you can't just try to figure this out for yourself. You have to engage with the admissions counselors so that they can connect you with the financial aid counselors who can help you understand what the correct decisions are, what the options are for you.
Absolutely.
And please understand that Lewis is not predatory. We're not trying to get you here just so we can suck you dry. I think there are institutions that are for profit that actually want to get your money. But I would say a vast majority of the institutions of higher ed are not for-profit institutions, and we sincerely want to figure out what's best for each individual student.
Correct.
And on the back end, too, once you have those student loans, there are income-based repayment programs where you never pay over a certain percent of your income, and then after a set number of years of repayment, the rest is forgiven. There are programs where if you work for not-for-profit institutions for 10 years, your student loans are forgiven. So there are a lot of ways that you don't even end up paying back that full amount. So yeah, don't be scared by the sticker price necessarily, because there's a lot of ways that both the government and the institutions themselves try to help.
Any final thoughts to share with prospective students, Ashley?
If you're on the fence, it's worth exploring the higher education opportunity. Again, going back to my conversation with my son, it's, if you don't feel like you're ready for the workforce, you have to do something after you graduate from high school. That was my rule. And so I said, it's much easier to go into college now than it is to try when you're 25, 30 years old. Not that it can't be done. We have many students here that do that, but sometimes it just simplifies life a little bit so that you're already in the school mode from high school. So let's just continue with that. But ultimately, you have to do a lot of be very self-aware and kind of do some self-analysis on what are my goals, what does it take, and again, exploring all my options, everything from community college to four-year institutions, and how can I make this affordable to make it work for what I want to accomplish in life.
And we're here to help you.
Absolutely. Ask for help. It's
So,
okay.
With that, the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Lewis University. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. The Lewis University name in all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. This podcast was produced in the WLRA podcast studio at Lewis University. Visit lewisu.edu for more information about Lewis University.
You've been listening to Science Coast with Mallory Havens and
Chris White and
Ashley Skidmore.
thanks.
bye, everybody.